Good evening. Happy Tuesday night from Germany as we count down to the last several weeks we are going to be here. It's really hitting home. We're having to do some of the logistical things to get the movers lined up, get the apartment cleaned out, get our vehicles shipped back to the States. Lots of stuff like that going on. Um, Getting our home ready back home, working out transportation stuff and all that kind of boring nonsense. But enough about that. I just wanted to throw a few comments out there. I see that the Democrat convention is going on this week in Chicago, and you've got the sound bites from Trump, who says cringeworthy things. You've got Kamala Harris, who says other cringeworthy things. And last night, Joe Biden said that, to the effect of, Kamala Harris and I are going to strengthen illegal immigration. Well, did he say the quiet part out loud? I don't know. But the two of them have been the best friend of illegal immigration for the United States. And then Trump the other day gave a speech and he talked about the Medal of Honor um, being not as good as the Medal of Freedom. Because he said when people get a Medal of Honor, they get shot and they wounded and sometimes they die. And I'm like, oh boy. So now you have Kamala Harris saying she's going to give $25,000 in free money. I don't know where she gets it or what constitutional authority she's going to use, but she wants to give people $25,000 as first time home buyers so they can afford a down payment on a house. Well, she must not have paid attention during economics because that's just going to drive up the price of housing. And she said in a different speech that they needed 7 million more homes. We're short 7 million homes. Well, she and Joe Biden probably let 10 to 12 million people in the country illegally who all have to live somewhere. So some of this stuff doesn't make sense. Then Trump comes out and says he doesn't want a tax on tips, which is, I get the sentiment, but the president doesn't have the power to change that. And why should somebody who gets their income from tips pay a lower marginal rate than somebody who gets paid by the hour? In other words, let's say a server works in a good restaurant, she makes 800 bucks a week, and the kitchen manager makes 800 bucks a week, but he's paid by the hour or salary, and the waitress gets most of her money from tips. Is it fair to have her paying taxes on about $200 a week and he pays tax on the whole thing? I don't think they thought that through very well. And that's a dig against Trump and Harris. Um, they were, she was talking about taking, she said she would take a patent away from a company if she thought they were being too greedy. So if a pharmaceutical company came up with just say they came up with a cure for the common cold and they stood to make a profit from it, she said, I'm going to snatch that patent from them. I have the will to do it. Well, there again, the Constitution would come up in the way. But people who support her are calling Trump an authoritarian. Then Trump says he's going to to fight inflation, he's going to put a 10% tariff on imported goods, which will drive up prices. This is just pretty crazy. It's almost like we've got this weird dichotomy of MAGA versus Marxism. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, if you really look through their agenda and what they believe, they're probably the closest thing we've had to a communist running for president since Gus Hall. A lot of people will deny it, but pull up the 10 pillars of communism sometime and pull up the 10 items in the Bill of Rights and go through them with Waltz and Harris and see which one they like better. But they read the Constitution and obviously they decided they didn't like it. Um, you know, uh, but Donald Trump probably never read it. It's a frustrating situation to be in, but both of them have made promises of what they're going to do. And if you look at our national debt right now is $35 trillion or so. We face 120 to 180 trillion dollars in unfunded future liabilities. That's things that the government is going to be on the hook for in the coming years. And right now, both Republicans and Democrats are adding $1 trillion of new debt roughly every 100 days. And after fiscal year 2024 ends, the interest, not principal, just the interest on the debt is over $1 trillion. Okay. A trillion is basically 1,000 billion, and a billion is 1,000 million. Okay. This is not sustainable. And neither Trump nor Harris seem to care about the debt. Trump talks about it a little bit, but Kamala doesn't seem to even care at all. She wouldn't even really pay it lip service. But had Biden gotten a second term, what he wanted to do would put the national debt at approximately 50 trillion by the time he left office in 2029. I suspect she's probably going to want to spend more. And one of the think tanks ran Trump's numbers, and if he got what he wanted to do, the debt would be between 40 and 45 trillion. Well, this is unsustainable. I've got my first grandson due the end of October, and he's going to be born with he's going to be on the hook for 95,000 to 100,000 in debt that he had no role in creating. Um, I'm I'm not here to say that the orange man has all the answers, and I'm not here to say that um, Kamala Harris is totally wrong about everything. She's wrong about most everything, but still, this is a bipartisan thing. Both parties have been complicit in doing this. So I look at some of the things. It's given me a different perspective living here in Europe and seeing all the countries over here that you folks over here in Europe have a lot of problems too. You've got skyrocketing debt. You have a shrinking population in the sense of native Europeans. So you have a high number of people coming in from other countries. And in some ways that's good because you get cheaper labor, but it's also bad because you're trying to fund a huge amount of migrants and you have a generous welfare state. Those two things are incompatible. You're going to have a lot of cultural clash. That's the best way to cultural strife coming at you in a few years. Um, I see the German political system. You have to build these coalitions, and you've got the AfD is rising out of nowhere, and nobody really wants to really deal with those folks, but more and more people are getting onto them. My German neighbor was explaining she likes the AfD. She said that she doesn't really agree with all their economic policies, but she understands the frustration, and she feels as though this woman's retired. She's in her 60s, and she feels as though that the older Germans are resentful of having to worry about their pensions being cut because the government needs money for newcomers. And the younger Germans feel as though they're having to compete against foreign individuals for jobs and promotions, and they're worried they're being taxed for things that they may never get to see. So some of those issues exist in the United States too. Um, but I just find it very interesting that what's going on in the world. It's like, you know, can we vote our way out of this situation? When's the time going to come when we can't keep borrowing more money? So we print more money. I'm sure they've printed euros too, which causes inflation. But we keep printing dollars. We're using loose monetary policy to mask um, reckless fiscal discipline. So this is one of the issues that when I go back to the States, I mean, we've been racked by inflation. The housing prices are up, and it seems like, energy prices have gone up, not as high as they are in Europe, but they're up. And, people are wanting answers, but people aren't willing to ask the right questions first. They want to keep giving more power to bureaucrats to try and fix things that in many cases the government has caused. You'll hear them talking about monopolies and price gouging. but yet they don't say anything about a government monopoly. And how do you define price gouging? That's like trying to define greed. Many people say greed is a problem, but they always think that somebody else is greedy. To coin the words of Milton Friedman, he'd be rolling in his grave right now if he saw what was going on. But yeah, we live in some interesting times. A lot of people don't want to even ask the right questions. I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen. I think that uh, the only candidate really talking about the deficit and the debt and sound monetary policy is Chase Oliver, who's a libertarian. Well, he has about as much chance of being president as I do, but he is asking the right questions. He's just not getting the press, and he's not going to be invited in the debates. So now it seems like we're back to the MAGA versus Marxism. Um, you know, you got the narcissistic bully versus the communist tyrant, and it's like, you know, people don't stop and think that the soft velvet glove of the government can very quickly become the hard iron fist of the state. And once you, like Kamala Harris said, she wants to outlaw private insurance, and make healthcare free. Well, once you start going down that road, you let that genie out of the bottle, you can't put it back in. And yes, we do have a problem with our healthcare system in the United States. It's not the delivery of the care that's the problem, it's the funding mechanism and all the bureaucracy and red tape involved. And you can't, you know, our government doesn't have the constitutional authority to have a national healthcare system. That's not an enumerated power of the federal government in the Constitution. So you would either have to do it on a state level, which is fine under the 10th Amendment, or you'd have to amend the Constitution. I know they don't follow the Constitution anymore, but that's the only real way to do it. But it is an interesting subject for thought. And I just think that we're eventually going to reach a level of debt in the United States that is so horrific that we're going to face severe austerity measures. And when we can't further debauch the currency because we'll get hyperinflation, or when other countries refuse to accept the dollar as payment as the world reserve currency, then we're going to find out that we've got some serious problems. Is that going to happen overnight? No, but it happened to the Weimar Republic, it happened to Zimbabwe, and it happened to uh, what was it, Argentina, and it happened to Venezuela, and it's still happening in Venezuela. Their bolivar is so worthless, they weigh money instead of counting it. I mean, I don't think the dollar will ever get that bad, but it's certainly, we've got a day of reckoning coming, and we've got to get a handle on things. And it's just very frustrating when politicians just keep on promising more and more. We're going to give you this, we're going to give you that. Vote for me, I'll give you this. Well, any government big enough to give you anything you want is going to be strong enough to take everything you've got. In the words of George Washington, he said, government is not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it can be both a dangerous servant and a fearful master. And I think he was correct about that. Now, as far as what's going on in Chicago, the Democrats are having their shindig up there. They had a lot of pro Hamas, pro terrorist protesters apparently trying to tear down fences on both sides of the venue. Maybe they were just testing the police response. I don't know. But when you have leftists, radical leftists of different stripes going at each other like that, it doesn't portend good things for the future. Just think what's going to happen in the United States if Donald Trump wins the election. You're going to see the left go berserk. If he loses the election and it's not deemed as being a totally fraudulent election, most of the people who are conservatives or on the right or whatever are going to be really pissed off, but they're just going to get up and go to work. But if he wins, you're going to see the left go totally berserk. It'll be like the 2020 riots all over again. And then you've got to worry, okay, well, what are governors and the president going to do? No governor wants riots on his watch, especially if the people who are victims of the riots start using lethal force to protect their homes and their families and their property. That's not going to look good. We don't want people shooting each other in America. We already have enough of that now, but we don't want people shooting at each other over political differences. So I just hope cooler heads will prevail. People think logically and don't tear the place up. My wife and I are coming back to the States, and fortunately, we're going to be living way out in the sticks. So it's pretty safe out there. But I'd be really nervous if I lived in or near a major city. Anyway, that's enough rambling for tonight. It's a live stream. What can I say? But I hope, like I said, you can use my mug to scare the rats away. I got a face for radio and a voice fit to print. So anyway, I left the comments thing turned on. So if I totally repulsed you, okay, that's fine. Everybody has their own opinion. I'm just one guy, just knocking out a few things. I think my next stream, I'm probably going to do something humorous. I like to, I'm not very good at doing it, but I like to tell jokes a lot. So maybe I'll have to do that because this political stuff, if I didn't have a sense of humor, I would have eaten a bullet by now. But anyway, you know, the system, people say our system is bad. Our system is probably the best in the world. It's the people in it who have corrupted it. But I will leave everybody with that tonight. So take care. Have a safe day wherever you are. And you know what? You cheated the Green Reaper another day. So that's a good thing for everybody.